If you're like me, you often look at mowers like this and wonder what would it be like if they were RC controlled. I mean, if you could just grab a control and go with it and run, and all of a sudden you're not riding on the mower, you are controlling it by RC. Man, that's a dream that I would say most guys who have mowed very much have had. The real dream's always been to have an FPV mower. You're going to bolt an FPV system on this mower, and you're going to be driving your mower around while you're sitting in your living room. And here's the thing, if you don't have an FPV mower and your neighbor does have an FPV mower, and you're riding around on your mower, you're getting sweaty, you're letting branches knock your hat off your head, you're swatting mosquitoes, and here your neighbor is sitting in his living room, driving by FPV during the commercial breaks of the game. You tell me who wins the afternoon. OxChief RC is a bolt-on, fully complete RC control system for all of the Bad Boy residential mowers and for the entry-level professional Bad Boy Maverick HD mower. Today, we're going to show the complete process of installing OxChief RC on a Rambler, and we'll take it out for a spin. First off, we want to remove the carbon canister from under the seat by removing the two 10mm bolts that hold the canister in place. After you dismount the canister, screw the bolts back into the canister and set it to the side as shown. All right. Next, we want to remove the cooler cover on the front of the mower. I don't exactly know why it's called a cooler cover. I'd expect to call it a nameplate or something like that. But remove this cover by removing the 3 1/2-inch screws holding it in place. On models like this Rambler with the brake lever bolted there to the nameplate, unbolt the brake with a 1/8-inch Allen key or hex socket. Next, unscrew the brake head ball and remove the brake from the cooler cover. Set the cover to the side and screw the brake head ball back to the brake lever. On the models with the brake lever mounted on the cover, you're going to mount the brake over to the right side using the included angle shelf mount. You'll notice in the video that I've already drilled the holes. Try to ignore that for now. I wish we had video of that, but we don't have it. But you want to find the location where to drill the holes by putting the brake lever into place, actuating it back and forth, and check that you have the ability to move it all the way forward and all the way backwards without it having any interference. And once you find that spot, you're going to want to drill the holes. And on this mower, we tapped out the holes with the M5 0.8 metric tap, but you can use the included bolts and nuts, and it'll be easier. I like the threads, but you absolutely could just use bolts and nuts on the other side and tighten them into place, tighten the shelf into place, and then you have your brake lever mount. With the shelf in place, go ahead and bolt the brake lever to the shelf, and you are finished moving the brake lever over to the right side of the mower, where I think it should have been in the first place anyway. All right, so we're going to take the OxChief assembly and mount it on the Bad Boy mower by going right through where the nameplate is. Yeah, so still warming up to calling that nameplate a cooler cover. We're just sliding the servo assembly in through the open area, and there's a metal lip under there that'll sit on nicely, and we'll take some pains here to show that you want that centered up as close as reasonably possible, and then we'll come in and tighten down the set screws. There are 3 set screws on either side, and we'll hit them with a 3/16-inch socket, and we actually want to use a torque wrench if you have it available to get the torque right on that. If you go too heavy, you can actually break those off. Just to be clear,
Look on the left and right corner where we've got the white arrows pointing at the base of the servo mount. You want the servo mount centered on the mower, and so you want those distances on the left and right from the servo to the mower side to be as close to identical to each other as possible. Now you're going to come in with a 3/16 inch hex socket and snug the servo mount by hand by tightening the 3 set screws on the left and the 3 set screws on the right. You want to snug the top 2 set screws by hand first, followed by the bottom set screws. Now, just to repeat for emphasis, snug down the top 2 set screws first, and then at the end, snug down the bottom set screws. This creates a more favorable torque profile for how the servo sits on the mower. If you have a lot of experience with torquing these kinds of set screws, you may be able to get away with tightening them by hand with an Allen key. It's highly recommended, however, that you use a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench to get the torque exactly right. Under no circumstances do we recommend using a regular 1/4 inch drive wrench to tighten down these screws because you can break them off in a hurry. Using your 1/4 inch drive torque wrench, and this wrench measures torque in inch pounds instead of foot pounds. Torque the set screws down to 85 inch pounds or 7.1 foot pounds of torque. Repeat the tightening sequence for the left side. Tighten the top 2 set screws and then the bottom set screw, 7.1 foot pounds or 85 inch pounds, whatever you do, not 85 foot pounds. On the bottom set screw, you may find that using about 12 inches of extension gives you more clearance and makes it easier to torque the set screw down. So you might need a couple of extensions at the bottom hex socket is a little too close to the metal four pan and lower to get a torque John. So we just kind of run this in. All right. There we go. So now we've got the room to and then we're getting it. There we go. Here we've got a custom platform that we bolted to the back of the mower seat to mount the antenna and the FPV camera to. If there's enough demand, we may offer a platform similar to this in the store at some point in the future. For now, though, notice that what we've got here is a vinyl flooring plank that we've heated up with a heat gun and put a bend in it to make the level mounting platform on top. We reinforced it with a wooden backbone and painted it black. The platform is roughly eye level for a rider. And so for FPV mowing, this is the viewpoint that you're going to want to go for. More info on the FPV setup later on, but for now, just keep in mind that you want the camera to be roughly where your eyes are as a rider, and you want to have some reference points on the mower to look at as you drive around. So, specifically, seeing the mower handles move back and forth and seeing the front wheels toward the bottom of your frame of vision is very helpful if you want to feel really connected to the mower as you drive. If instead, for instance, you mounted a camera on the front of the mower, like up close to the wheels at the very front, you would tend to have a feeling that you were floating around instead of being connected to the mower. We will mount the radio antenna on this platform since it is the highest point on the mower. The transmitter receiver is built with ExpressLRS technology. This provides really incredible range. And so, even if you can't mount the antenna on a high point on the mower, I think you're going to be pretty amazed with how far you can take the mower out if you have line of sight between yourself and the receiver. If possible, of course, you do want to mount the receiver antenna as high as possible for the best possible radio connection between the transmitter and receiver. We've mounted the antenna onto our platform, but if you don't have a platform yet, you can just set the antenna into the left cup holder on the side of the mower as a temporary solution. Now, connect the antenna to the receiver by screwing the antenna's metal plug end into the receiver jack that's located on the lower corner of the left aluminum enclosure on the servo mount. You should be able to get away with snugging the antenna down by hand if you have reasonably strong fingers. If, like me, you insist on putting a wrench on the plug, use a 5/16 and just give it a tiny bit of torque so that you don't break it off. Next, it's time to connect the servo to the battery by connecting the ring connector on the servo's red wire to the positive battery terminal, and then connecting the ring connector on the servo's black wire to the negative battery terminal. You'll notice that both battery cables have a protective rubber boot. I found that it's easiest to first remove this boot entirely from the battery cables and then run the smaller servo wire through the boot. And finally, after you've run the smaller wire through the boot, then run the bigger battery cable through the boot. If you don't take the boot off the battery cable first, you may find that it's too tight to run the smaller servo wire through. Notice that on some bad boy models like this Rambler, you actually have two wires connected to the negative battery terminal. You have the bigger black battery cable and a smaller black cable. Make sure to reconnect both of these cables to the negative battery terminal. If you forget about this smaller negative cable, your mower may not start. After running the cables through the battery boots, bolt the cables back to the battery terminals, making sure, of course, that you connect the red cables to the positive battery terminal. Now that the battery is hooked up, you've got positive OxChief on positive battery, negative OxChief on negative battery. You're wanting to actually power the OxChief receiver and the assembly on so that you can make sure that it's working correctly, make sure that the servos are actuating, and then you will actually put it in neutral. We need it to be in neutral for the next step. So the first thing is go ahead and turn on the radio, and it'll always give you this throttle warning. That's just part of the radio firmware. And yeah, so make sure it's more or less at neutral and click the right scroll button to proceed. So you take the on-off switch for the OxChief servo assembly and you turn it on. And now you're going to need to wait about 10 seconds. All right. And so now it's connected. And you'll notice that if you actuate the throttle up and down, see, it moves the servo assembly. That's good. That's what you want. If it's not moving, then we got to troubleshoot that. But go ahead and put the uh, the throttle at as close to neutral as you can. So you want to make sure that those little dots are lining up. And it doesn't have to be perfect right now. You just want it to be close, right? Everything's gonna work better if it's just as close as possible. And once you have that on, then you're ready to bolt the linkage adapters to the mower. So we're going to bolt the right one down. We're going to tighten it down, tighten the left one down. And we're going to do this by removing these 4 hex nuts and sandwiching it over the drive arm actuator tube, tightening it down. All right. So you put this down and you sandwich the top of the collars over. And the game here is that you want to tighten these down evenly, in the sense that, okay, imagine you tighten this side all the way down and then this side was up a lot higher. You could end up putting weird torque on this bolt and actually bending it. So you're basically wanting the gap on this side and the gap on this side over here to be more or less the same. And again, it doesn't have to be to the thousandth, but you're wanting them to at least to eyeball close to each other. And as you tighten them down, you want to tighten them down together. You're not wanting to try to tighten down one side before the other, because you could get into a little bit of trouble if you did that. All right. And so before you really snug it down, you want to make sure that this is sitting to where to where on the linkage adapter that it's clear to move as it should. So it's not rubbing up against this arm right here, right? So you want it to be clear and more or less pointing straight back. So go ahead and put both sides down. Okay. Okay. And again, before I really tighten these down, I want to at least wait. I want to have enough time to get it exactly where I want it to be. And that's again, you want this linkage to more or less point straight back, and you don't want it to be rubbing up against that plate. All right. So, and you don't want this bolt to be rubbing up against this rod. So you want it to look something like, and this one's where it needs to be now. So we could go ahead and tighten that. Making sure to tighten down the sides of a collar evenly so that this gap it is the same. And that's kind of, I point that out from experience that I've tightened one side all the way down before. And then whenever you would tighten down the other side, you would actually bend this. So I've hand tightened them now. With it hand tightened, now you're ready to torque it to 85 inch-pounds. Let's get this up to 85 inch-pounds. Now let's roll. And I'm kind of looking down there trying to eyeball which side I should tighten. There it is. That's 85. That's 85. That's 85. There's 85. Okay. You're good. Now, this it's turned on, and so you can't move it. It's at neutral. But watch what happens when keep in mind the right arm is connected now. The left arm's not. So watch what's going to happen whenever you move the right arm forward. It's really smooth and really nice. Okay, so on this side, for these collars, you want to do the same thing. Take off the top of the collar and just set it off to the side if possible. Take off the collar there. Okay. And you come over here and you find a spot where this linkage is basically parallel to the mower, right straight back, and it's not, the bolt over here is not going to rub against this linkage, and it's not going to interfere with the plate. So yeah, and once you've more or less found that, put that down. Okay. And I'm doing the same process of hand sort of tightening it down and making sure that the two sides are sort of evenly tightening down so that you don't end up putting some kind of weird torque on the. Oh, here I should have. It's probably okay. I realized that I had placed it on the tube a little inside of where I'd marked. That's really not a big deal. You know, I'd always like these things to look really smooth, but the truth is it's a little bit of field work. There we go. All right. Let's just say that's more or less going to be it. And you could argue. Okay. Something like that. And now you sort of hand tighten it down. And if you're happy that it looks like it's more or less even, see, like here, it looks to me like this side's a little higher than there. So I'll start tightening first on that side just to get it even. All right, something like that, yeah. And then come over here. All right, there you are. There you are, 85. And 85. 85. Perfect. Now the servo's control arms are completely attached to the mower. You can control the left and the right arms with the servo control. So let's install the OxChief on-off switch on the mower control panel. We want to put a 15-30 seconds hole in this tab, in this blank tab. And if yours is not blank, then I guess you could use this tab. If this tab's not blank, just come up with a place on the panel to put the on-off switch. So you want to make sure that it's off, that the servo assembly is off. And after you've drilled this hole out, you're going to pull this panel up. It'll make it easier to put the switch up in. So let me remove. So that lifts up, and we're just going to run the on-off switch underneath. Pull the on-off switch actuator up through the hole that you just drilled out. Ensure that up is on and down is off. Secure the switch in place by snugging down the rubber boot by hand. Now that we've added the servo on-off switch to the control panel, it's time to tighten the panel back down. With a 1/8 hex bit or Allen key, tighten the 4 screws on the corners back down to complete the on-off switch install. Lastly, remove the gold transaxle spring from the left and right transaxles. This spring pulls the mower handles back to the neutral position, working against the servo motors in our setup. So turn that off, and then turn this on. And if you have it forward a little bit, actually whenever it comes on, it'll pull the arms back. Yeah, I think there it is, about 10 seconds. All right. So now, so notice that we have a couple of tube clamps on these bars. This is to keep the arms from falling back into a lock position whenever it's going around. So we put the two clamps on and then put something like a bungee cord. Okay. And so now it's going to hold. And see, the elasticity in the bungee cord lets you make the real long diagonal kind of buttons. Let's take a look at the cleaned up final installation. Notice the two cables running down from the antenna platform to the servo assembly, one the auxiliary power cable and then the radio antenna cable. We use adhesive back 3/4 inch zip tie mounts to route the wires cleanly down the back of the mower. A few more adhesive back zip tie mounts are caught into service beneath the seat. Try to bundle any excess wiring together so that you keep the servo area really tidy. Before giving the zip ties that final tightening tug, ensure that the mower seat can operate throughout its entire range of motion without putting any of the cables in a bind. The FPV setup is sold separately. If you're familiar with the FPV field, DJI is the leader, and we've had pretty amazing performance out of our setup. The camera unit we're using is called the DJI O4 Air Unit Pro, and the goggles are called the DJI Goggles N3. We plug the camera unit into our auxiliary power connector, and so the setup is seamless. When we turn on the switch to the servo, the camera powers on and begins transmitting HD video to our goggles. These units are really popular, and depending on the current trade tariff rumors, you may have to work a little to find them in stock. Where we live in the southeastern United States, the garden spiders and the banana spiders are building massive webs between basically every pine tree. And these spiders are huge. They've got like 1 inch bodies. Sometimes their legs, they end up being as big across as your hand. And while they're supposedly considered harmless, they really do have a painful bite. And have you ever been mowing your grass and the next thing you know, you go between a couple of trees and you're hit with a massive tangle of spider web and you start swatting off every square inch of skin. Your neighbors are thinking you're having a seizure. You're doing anything you can to keep that big gal from chomping down on your tender flesh. And it's not just banana spiders and garden spiders. Your outdoor wonderland is about to be invaded with another massive 8-legged predator, the Joro spider, an invasive species from Asia. The United States exported boy-girl groups and social media addiction to Asia, and so they sent us yet another species of giant spider. This is the kind of situation that OxChief believes is simply unacceptable. When you install the OxChief RC system on your mower, you will plow through every spider web in sight without concern. You won't flinch, and the spiders will learn to set up shop in some other yard. On these 90-plus-degree dog days of summer, you're going to be mowing your yard from the 72-degree comfort of your living room, sitting back in your most comfortable recliner. Perhaps, like me, you'll install an FPV system onto your mower. You really can install OxChief in one afternoon. We showed you every step in this video. You are an American guy. You've easily got this. Go to the OxChief shop right now, buy the OxChief RC system, and be the first person in your neighborhood to step into the future of lawn maintenance.